Welcome, Roster Wars, to our new home on StreamYard, which looks like to be good fun for now. So welcome back. It's been a while since we've been here, since we did our little mock draft a few weeks back. So how you guys been? You been well, Ross?
Yeah, I've been doing all right. There's been a lot going on. Like you said, it's been so much happening in roster wars with the drafts. It's been pretty jam packed. It's a bit of a quiet period now, so just get a bit of relaxing before it all kicks off again.
Nathan, you've been travelling the world and playing cricket, I understand.
Yeah, it's been a pretty busy month or so. I was obviously the Easter period. I went back to South Africa to see family, and a very close friend of mine had a wedding. So I was out there for a good 3 weeks, sort of throughout the period of sort of the draft, and then got back and pretty much almost immediately headed out to Menorca, the little island in the Mediterranean that's part of Spain. It's not too far from Ibiza and Palma de Mallorca, where a lot of the rave sort of islands are. But Menorca is definitely not one of those. It's quite a quaint little island, and it almost feels still sort of back in the ages. It's very basic, quite sort of arid terrain, and yeah, not that built up, quite local, still very, very Spanish. And then yeah, it's just been sort of non-stop. Work's been busy, but as you say, back to sort of NFL and watching the draft and trying to keep up with the OTAs now, and it just feels like it's getting closer and closer. I think it was Tyler that posted earlier that it's about 100 days until kickoff. So flipping hell, before we realise it, I think week one will be upon us.
Yeah, and sooner rather than later, I'm getting sort of withdrawals. We're in this sort of dead period now of we're literally watching people not train properly, not wearing pads, just walking around. It's always a difficult period of the season, but we can also make it good fun. And obviously, with roster wars never stops either, right? So there's always, we've had our RFA, you've had the draft, which we'll talk about. I would just like to say, as I think Ross pointed out earlier on, I had the best draft in the room here. So 100% record, no reaches, perfect picks. So I'm happy with that this year.
When is your next pick, Mike?
2025.
Oh, there we go. That's a good class, I believe. I heard it's a really good one.
Since joining Roster Wars, I've only ever picked 3 players.
And those are?
That will be Javonte Williams, Nick Bolton, and Zaven Collins. That's my only 3 draft picks I've made in the entire time I've been in Roster Wars.
Wow.
2 or 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, not too bad. And Zaven Collins had a better season last year, so and hopefully Javonte comes back as the player he was. So we'll see.
Not with Samaje Perine in town.
It's fine. He's keeping the seat warm. So, I guess all the Broncos fans out there hope that the Broncos come back to life this year. So we'll see. We'll see indeed. So let's kick off talking about your drafts in particular. Let's start here. Let's cover in the room first. Nathan, how do you feel you did, and what were your picks? Look at your draft picks here.
Yeah, so I didn't have a first. So basically, my first season in Roster Wars, I thought trying to go in a bit. I had a decent team. I ended up sneaking, winning the chapter on the last sort of week, and then I think I traded a first for something like Tyler Lockett and Noah Fant, and regretting it down the line. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I went into the draft with no first round capital. I traded away. I'm trying to think. I picked up the second round because I think I traded linebacker. I think Logan Wilson. I got a second rounder for Logan Wilson with Kenny and the counselors. Yeah, it's difficult. My team sort of capitulated in year 2 in the PP. I had quite a lot of bad injuries. I traded Josh Allen away quite early. So because I put myself in that sticky position, I knew straight away that a rebuild is what was necessary. But I had a rebuild without any elite draft picks. So I was left with sort of a mid-late second. I had a couple of third rounders, a couple of fourth rounders and fifth rounders. So it sort of dropped to me at the 208. I'm just trying to look at the overall table who sort of went after me at the 208. But I tend to feel when you are looking at rebuild, and you guys must sort of interject and sort of give your opinions as well. But I tend to feel the longevity really is in the wide receivers when it comes to sort of looking at a rebuild. And although I'm very running back needy, I felt that going with Jonathan Mingo at the 208 was better than going IDP side. And in terms of the other options, there was sort of Rashee Rice, there was Luke Musgrave, Josh Downs, Marvin Mims. Ross, I know you guys sort of obviously spoke about sort of where you saw the rookie wide receivers, but in terms of grading sort of Mingo and Jalen Reed and Rashee Rice and some of those guys in the PP that went after, where did you stand on some of those receivers?
Yeah, I think, well, first, in terms of drafting for need, I don't think anyone should ever draft for need, like regardless of the state, like rebuild or contending, like just picking any, maybe except for quarterback, but picking any rookie and expecting them to have like year one production is just like a fool's errand. That's when you see guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire go in front of Jonathan Taylor, and it's just a horror show. But in terms of Mingo, I think I like Jayden Reed a little bit better. Just personally, I just like the talent a bit more. Mingo's in probably a better situation. He's got a wide open sort of depth chart. DJ Chark, I think, is the biggest thing in his way to opportunity and to targets. And he's obviously with the rookie quarterback who can sort of grow with him as well. So I wouldn't, like, I prefer Jayden Reed, but at the end of the second, Jonathan Mingo, I think he's a decent pick. I've seen him go early second in a lot of places, and that's just far too rich for me. But I'm a lot more comfortable where you took him. And like you said, the options around there, Rashee Rice just doesn't do it for me. He's another one who's a landing spot darling. But yeah, I don't see the Chiefs wide receiver as like maybe a premium spot, because they just throw to Kelsey and the running backs, and yeah, everyone else just picks up the scraps.
I thought Sky Moore was a similar situation last year, right? So he was coming in, it's really highly touted. He's going to the high-powered offense of the Chiefs, and hasn't really got going. I guess year two could be a year he might, once he's more dialed into them. But yeah, you're the fifth wide receiver off the board there as well. So
I just felt that having done 2 seasons, and Roster was actually my first IDP league. So I sort of threw myself a little bit into the deep end, but I feel like I've sort of come to terms with it relatively quickly. And I don't know, I don't see a lot of immediate value on rookies in terms of the IDP side. And because of that, I tend not really to want to use too much premium draft capital, unless obviously some of the absolute elite IDP guys fell to me. Look, I could maybe have reached for someone like a Jalen Carter, or someone along those lines, but even so, Lucas Van Ness went pretty much 209, which, look, I think it was the highest taken in terms of the leagues. I didn't feel the right play for me at that time was to dart throw at IDP. It was more to dart throw on the offensive side. So that's why you can see sort of early in the third round, I made the play on Roschon Johnson at 301. I just like his situation. And again, this is a bit of a need, but also I do have him sort of, in terms of the running backs that were left on the table, you still had Tyjae Spears, there was still Tank Bigsby, and even Chase Brown, who are also as good. I don't know. There's something about Roschon Johnson that I like, the look of. I think he was slept on a bit because he obviously played second fiddle to Bijan. And then over and above, I went for the dart throw on the quarterback, Hendon Hooker, just because I thought he might go and I can sort of stash him, because I'm in a situation where my quarterbacks, I've got Kyler Murray on a 1-year contract and I've got Trey Lance in 3 years. So I have a lot of potential there, but I could be in a position in 1 year's time where I don't actually have a quarterback at all. So it is a bit of a worry, but that's why I sort of see myself. I've got 3 first rounders next year. So I'm sort of hoping that one of them is close enough to the 1-on-1 to look at guys like sort of Caleb Williams and Drake May. And then I went for another sort of wide receiver dart through at the 307 at Jalen Hyatt. Yeah, Mike, you obviously being the Bears man, what are your thoughts on Johnson and my sort of my dart throws in the third round there?
So I quite like to look at Johnson. Obviously, we've moved on from Monty. He's gone to the Lions. Whether or not he'd be the feature back to start off with, I don't know. But he hasn't got much mileage on the clock. What he did have, what I've seen on tape, he looked pretty decent behind Bijan. I think by the end of the by the second half of the season, he could be the feature back if his progress comes on. And he held him back at college was Bijan Robinson. The Bears might have picked up a real gem there. But time will tell on that. Obviously, the running back room in Chicago is not world class. It's not the greatest. I mean, Donta Foreman had a good sort of year last year, but whether or not that continues, we'll have to sort of see how it goes on. Hendon Hooker's obviously an interesting one for you as well. He's rehabbing at the moment with his ACL, and he's about to turn 45, I think. Is he 46 this year? He's one of the old. I was listening to, this morning while I was watching listening to Good Morning Football. He's saying and doing the right things. He's trying to learn. This is a red shirt year for him, right? He's not likely to play much football this year, so I guess we'll sort of see more progress with him. Like Mingo, like you said, he's the interesting one. He's one that's got the ability to break out more. I think in year one with the red rifle under centre for the first 30 minutes, and then the rookie comes in, and it could obviously they spend rookie mini camps together as well. And hopefully building a bond. So I think that's like you said, you start getting more and more darts throws as you go down. Zach Evans.
Yeah, look, in the fourth there, I obviously went Zach Evans because I am a Cam Akers owner. Like for good or for bad, I've got Cam Akers, and I don't know what the situation is going to be there in LA. And look, I'm an Ole Miss fan. I support the Rebels in my college football side of things. So I like Zach Evans. I don't think he's going to like the world alike, but I think he's in a situation that who knows if the Rams do get fed up with Cam Akers again, there's not much competition there, and again it was more a landing spot. And then there's not much too more to sort of speak about my draft. You can sort of see I got to the stage where I just went on flyers and sort of second year linebackers as opposed to looking at rookie players. So I picked up who was it? I picked up Terrell Bernard, I picked up Jacob Phillips, and then I picked up Jack Gibbons, who are all sort of 3 second-year, third-year linebackers who I feel are moving into position in their depth charts where they might get more snaps and we can see a bit more of them. I don't know, Ross, what's your opinion on drafting sort of not necessarily a rookie, sort of veteran IDP guys during a draft?
Yeah, I think it tends to bear fruit. I mean, just thinking about the Rising Rookies draft last year, we had Cody Barton going in the 4th, and he turned out to have a really good season for the Pigskins. And then I believe Zay Flowers was another pick late on as well. So they tend to get a lot better production because you obviously don't have that first 1 or 2 years of the rookie learning and developing. So you sort of skip that and go straight to the production if there is going to be any production. So yeah, I don't mind it. And I was looking at Bernard myself and Rising Rookies, and I really like him as a sort of breakout candidate. I know they drafted Dorian Williams, who I also really like, but they seem to be drafting a year in advance or a year or two in advance, that organisation, just because they're really well run, and that's what you do. So I think Bernard's going to get a shot, maybe even the first shot at it, and that's going to be a productive spot next to Matt Milano. So I really like that pick. And I've also owned Jacob Phillips and a couple of leagues, to be honest. He's a player who he seems to be efficient when he gets on the field, and he did have some production last year. So he's sort of like a due for a breakout, I think. So yeah, I definitely see the value in taking those guys over some of the rookies. But I do have to admit that I had to Google Jack Gibbons because I have no idea who he is. I feel like I go pretty deep with IDP, but I didn't have that one. Definitely not.
I just looked at sort of, how there's that thing in the research where it just gives you the projected points, and obviously sort of
most interesting pick, Nathan. I do believe he lost. you.
Is it me lagging or is it Mike?
You're back?
It's making.
That's me.
Don't worry. Yeah, we can hear you. I think you're back. Roscoe, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. It's
Okay,
Mike
cool.
is,
That's a great picture as well that he's frozen on. But yeah, so I think I don't know. I like the look of sort of the linebackers, and I think Jack Gibbons was another one that was just projected to sort of score points. So that's why I just sort of thought I'd go in on Jack Gibbons and take another dart throw, because in those later rounds, the sort of fifth, sixth rounders, there's really slim pickings. So that's why I just thought, just in the rebuild, to go for that. And I've got quite a high. I've got 3 firsts and 2 seconds next year, which really need to be sort of hits. And obviously, I tried to save a bit of Warbucks, so I've sort of got 90 Warbucks in the shell in the shed. So hopefully, next off season will be a year to sort of speed around the sort of rebuild. Are you back with us, Mike?
I am indeed. I think Foster Moreau cut me off. I was about to ask you how he must feel being cut and then rehired in the space of a few days. So I think he must have cut me off.
Look, he was on a 3-year contract with me when he was diagnosed with cancer. Although it seems like quite a treatable and curable sort of diagnosis, clearly, because he's obviously been sort of re-signed by the Saints. So he was cut as a free agent. I dropped him, and I subsequently apologized to him and redrafted him in the 7th round, and he's back with the Saints.
Well, I wish you luck for the season with you then.
Yeah, look, I wish him luck for the New Orleans Saints, let alone the Stellenbosch Saints. But no, that's sort of my thinking and my sort of strategy behind that draft in a nutshell. Really, it didn't have much elite value in terms of picks, so sort of had to quite a few offensive dart throws and a few sort of second-year IDP players.
Okay, so while we're here, let's have a look at the rest of the sort of the promising prospects draft, and if we think of anyone's kind of made some absolute blinder of picks in here, or any reaches. Any sort of thoughts? Maybe Nate, you shouldn't comment too much on this as your co-stars in your league. Ross, any sort of thoughts of anyone?
For me, one of the best picks I had was Roschon Johnson actually in the 3rd, but I like some of the running backs that went also in the 3rd. I think this is just the players that I like, so it's just it's a common theme when I'm looking at everyone's draft. It's just players that I like, but I like Tyjae Spears going 308 to the Councillors.
Yeah.
He was a 3rd round pick in the NFL draft, and I think he's a talented player. I think we all liked him on the United Nations Rookie Summit pod, and he's could have a sort of a path to touches, if not this year, then definitely next year, with King Henry looking like on the edge.
Is he heir to the throne?
Tennessee.
Yeah, so the heir to the throne of King Henry.
The heir to the throne, yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah.
I thought the interesting one maybe was the lady who confesses to know nothing about IDP taking Wood Anderson at the 110. I thought that was quite a bold move. I guess obviously needs must if you know that's a player you're looking for and drafting. Sam Laporta taking him at the start of the 2nd. I think maybe some of these sort of pre-season reviews are quite good of what he's been doing, so that could be quite an interesting one.
Yeah, just to give some sort of context to that. Look, I think it was Keith's fourth pick already, and he sort of Keith obviously had that elite draft value. So he went Bijan, he went CJ Stroud, he went Jack Campbell. He sort of ticked all the needs, and he is quite tight end needy. So he was at a bit of a luxury there to go sort of Sam Laporta. But as you say, he went over Michael Mayer, and I don't know about you guys. I really like Mayer, although Mayer is more sort of a historically more of a blocking sort of tight end, or at least he's got that sort of attribute to him. I just think that Mayer is going to see the field a lot more than Laporta will. But I don't know. It's all speculation early season anyway.
Well, they need a sort of quarterback out in Vegas at the moment. Sounds like Jimmy G's gonna start the season cropped yet again. So that'll be interesting.
Get Brady back.
Is there anyone else on this list that?
I didn't. Talking about reaches, like I thought Lucas Van Ness. I think you touched on him earlier. Like I thought that was a bit high for me. He's obviously a first round pick, but in the second round, you could probably get him in the third round, definitely. But I just think he's going to take some time to develop. He's a developmental player, so is he going to maybe trade for him next year? Give up a second or third round pick, and you've got the same value. But I think he's a developmental player, and I would not have picked him this high.
Yeah,
but yeah, we'll see.
No, I tend to agree with that. But... Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
In comparison, he was taken at the 409 in the RR. I was trying to see it. And the 402 in the TT. And I'm trying to find him in the DD now.
But then just to give a little bit of context behind that, obviously it was the Dallas Spurs. And if you sort of look at their picks, their next pick was the 407. So obviously they were sort of deliberating whether or not he would make it to the 407. Maybe trading back would have been a better option there if possible to sort of get back into the third. But if Lucas Van Ness is your guy and you're at the 209 and your next pick is the 407, you probably are tempted to take him. But I agree, probably a bit of a reach, but that's just a little bit of the context behind the pick.
Yeah, 311 in the DD as well. So, but yeah, okay. Like you say, yeah. If you got to wait 20 odd picks to your next pick and your guy's there, I guess you take him. So
yeah, you see strange things happen, but no, it was an interesting draft. I think it was done in sort of good spirits. There were a lot of sort of good comments, and I tried to get sort of the reviews out as quickly as possible. And yeah, life got busy, so I wasn't able to get much further than the third round. But I think there were quite a lot of dart throws, and it's going to be interesting to see who actually breaks out this year and what teams can compete. I think Keith's team is looking. Keith's had a very nice draft there, getting sort of Bijan, as I said earlier, CJ Stroud, Campbell, Laporta, and then he picked up Rashee Rice and Downs. So he's got loads of dart throws there. So yeah, I think the Falcons have definitely improved their depth quite considerably.
Then looking here, see Carlo with Anthony Richardson, JSN. I guess actually, thinking about taking Will Anderson then at 110, she had two good offensive picks in her first two picks. So
yeah.
Looking up on the IDP side. Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll retract my reach comment on that one then. Okay, great. So where should we look next? Should we look at the main league and have a look at see what these guys, the real pros, have been up to?
Yeah, we're talking about the RR is the main league. We're the best league in.
We're saving
fastest.
the best till last. Best till last.
Yeah.
Fastest, best, everything. Perfect.
Yeah.
When I had a quick look at sort of the TT, and I thought you look at some of the picks on that. I mean, there's obviously the top six in pretty much every division, every conference has gone. Okay, not in the same order, but it's pretty much the same 6-7 guys are in that top 6-7 numbers. I thought Kendre Miller going at the 202. The TT in comparison to some of the other conferences was maybe a little bit high, but then on the same time, Tyjae Spears going in the 210, same team. So they've doubled up on some good running backs there, so a good little sort of combination.
Yeah, I think Kanyang also got. He also picked up Devin Achane at the 206.
Yes, indeed. Just looking here, at the 206. So he's stocking up that running back room with young guys. So I guess in this league makes sense. They're more productive when they're younger and less banged up, some of these guys. So very few obviously can still be doing it at 28, 29. Trying to think what else in here.
I liked talking running backs again. Like I liked Tank Bigsby at 309. Just the end of third. Obviously, I quite biased. I took him myself, but 309 is a really good range, I think, and he's a power back, and he's going to complement Etienne well. And the Jags and Pedersen are obviously committed to having multiple backs, so I think he can see some opportunity early, and we'll see if he takes it or not and becomes fantasy relevant. But I thought it was a good value there.
I think I read something today. Yeah, I think I read something today, but again, this is OTA, so a lot of it can be a lot of smoke. But they were talking about sort of the backfield in Jacksonville and how they intend on controlling Travis Etienne's volume. So it will be interesting whether that's sort of injury related, whether it becomes more sort of, as you said, a receiving back option. Maybe this becomes a bit of a sort of a Kamara, a Mark Ingram type backfield where you've got sort of your ground and pound guy in Bigsby, and then your sort of third down back in Etienne, who has big upside. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that offense progresses, because they've obviously gone with Calvin Ridley as well. He's obviously back from his suspension, so I like the look of the Jags. And I know I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, Mike, but we've got Jacksonville versus the Buffalo Bills in London. So Roscoe, I think we need to all try and get tickets for that and get down to London for that.
Well, I've already got tickets for the
game, yeah.
Jacksonville Falcons games.
Okay.
I'm trying to get tickets those next week. I've already got tickets for the Jacksonville versus Falcons game already. So I'll be seeing 2 games this year at the moment, where it's going. Hopefully some more.
Good.
Anyone else on this in the TT we need to look at here? Do you think, or?
Yeah, look, I think Jack Campbell again. He sort of sneaks into the first there. I think again we're talking about Ian his absolute behemoth of the team, the KCGS, the sort of Kane County Goon squad. Like, he obviously had the luxury. He picked up JSA and went Jack Campbell. There wasn't much picking after that. I think he only then again picked sort of in the 6th round. So he sort of added to an already strong squad there. But yeah, look, I'm still pretty anti sort of IDP that early in drafts, regardless of how good they are. But I don't know. I think Jack Campbell is clearly the elite linebacker from this rookie class that goes straight into volume, as opposed to sort of how good the guy is really. But we all know he's one of the leading prospects there. So I don't know. As sort of Ross touched on earlier, Kendra Miller also a bit sort of on the high side. But yeah, I think it's Sam and his Mad Goats did pretty well sort of in the late 2nd, early 3rd, with a few sort of upside picks. But it looks like a pretty well-rounded, as you say. Lucas Van Ness was in the early 4th. Zach Evans sort of in the mid 4th. Ross, what are your thoughts on Keishon Butte?
He's a bit of an enigma, isn't he? Because he's got the talent, or 2 years ago he had the talent, but he just doesn't seem that interested. So I wonder if he's went to the Patriots, and people say, "Oh, it's a good place to go. Bill Belichick will get him sorted out." But it could go the other way, and it could just he could be cut, and he could just never see the NFL again. So I'm not sure. I like him. I think the 4th round here is a bit much for me personally. I'd be looking at maybe the 6th or 7th, but Sam had so many picks. He took quite a lot of good players as well. I liked his draft quite a lot. But I can see Butte. I can see it going either way, to be honest, for Butte. But I do like what I saw from him 2 years ago. I'm sort of rooting for him as well to get back to what he was, because there was a lot of haters at the time saying that he can't do it and he's not got a good attitude and all that. So I hope he can get his act together.
Yeah. In contrast, Tyler took him at the 609. So I kind of sort of nice. spread between the sort of the tierings there.
I just think when I'm doing my tiers, I look at the NFL draft, and that sort of sorts them into tiers for me. So Butte was a 6th round pick in the NFL draft, and he's going in the 4th round, when there's probably guys going a wee bit later who are higher up in the actual NFL draft. So that's how I sort myself out. But again, like I said, Sam had a lot of picks already, and he's probably just taking guys that he liked at that stage.
One thing that stood out in the TT for me was Greg with the California Nightmare, taking Bryce Young, taking Will Levis. He stocked up 2 young sort of QBs that might come through. Considering he's already holding Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson, that's a pretty strong QB room he's got there now. So be that for a long term. He's got Jackson on 1 and Herbert on 2. So you can stock those guys up behind and maybe get some trade value out of either the current starters or the backups. So.
The one thing I've also just noticed, just skimming through their draft, is there was not one veteran taken in their draft. It was a full draft of rookies. So obviously that either means one of two things: either these guys think that this is a very strong rookie class, or they prefer to sort of use their draft capital on rookies and look onto the sort of the waivers for other veterans, or maybe there wasn't much depth on the veteran side of things.
They're quite.
Yeah, I'm not sure about free agents, but yeah.
I'm just looking here. So one of the most polarizing players I've noticed across all 4 conferences is Darnell Washington. He seems to be going from, well, we got him in the RR. He's going at the 306. He goes at the 409 to Sam in the TT. And then he's down as far as the 710 to Bob at the Slashers in the DD. It's a very polarizing view of any player, especially a tight end in a tight end premium league, right?
Yeah, and he went 5-10 in the PP to the Dallas Spurs. I think it's very difficult. I think a lot of people have got quite a strong positive opinion on Pat Frymouth, and I think I think because Frymouth has done relatively well, considering it was the landing spot that I think, if anything, has deterred them massively, as opposed to who he was, because he was quite highly sort of projected in terms of his draft capital, and everyone thought he was going to be a good option fantasy wise. But it did come down to sort of landing spots, and I think the reality is he's still going to be productive, and he's going to get a lot of time on the field there. I think they need to sort out that offensive line, and I think someone like Tomlin has done so well with his wide receivers that I think he does need sort of an escape valve, and Pat Frymouth's done that. I don't know. It's difficult to see the volume for Darnell Washington, and I think that's what deters people, as opposed to sort of the player himself. I don't know. That's just my feeling. I like the guy, and I think he'll do well in the NFL, and I think he's definitely going to make the Steelers a better team. It's just he's just not a fantasy relevant player, in my opinion.
Yeah, the usage has always been the question for fantasy purposes anyway. Obviously, he's a great blocker, and that's not what we want for fantasy. We want the guys who are flexed out in the slot and catching 100 balls. But so tight ends just take ages to develop as well. So it takes quite a lot for me to pick a tight end, because I'm just not going to get the return. I've been burned too many times. I've still got Noah Fant on my roster waiting to break out. So yeah, it's I think people see the talent, and then you've got the guys who are looking at like you said, maybe the blocked depth chart, maybe the usage, and also the just tight ends not being great in general, but the athletic upside is probably attractive to quite a few people.
Yeah, I had him down as more of a blocking tight end than a sort of pass catching, but I guess they can develop him as goes along. I think obviously the wide receiver options in Pittsburgh aren't top tier as well. Obviously, they've got one of the greatest wide receivers in A-Rob joining, which obviously doesn't detract from anyone else in there. So I guess, adding another option in there would be quite interesting. So just trying to see if there's anyone else in there that kind of interesting. Obviously, Stye's changed across to the TT, so he's looking at his draft. He didn't have an awful lot of picks, but seems to have added some good prospects in there with Will Anderson in defence, and he's taken I've lost it now. Luke Musgrave, quite after in the 3rd round, I think it was 308. So that's sort of building up quite a good sort of young core as well since he's moved across. Okay, if we look at the TT, sorry, the DD even. So obviously that was almost one man had all the draft picks in the Silver Ballers. He had so many picks in the first half of this draft. And then obviously this Degenerates as well, taking 2 QBs at 2 and 3.
Yeah,
it's quite an interesting ploy.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to sort of look at, because I don't know. Derek was. he had some. We had obviously 4 back-to-back picks in the first round. You got 107, 108, 109, 110. But that was really on the cusp of, as we said earlier, just outside that elite top 6 that we were talking about. And I think, I don't know, maybe it was difficult to sort of break into that top 6, but I'm pretty sure Derek would have obviously exercised every avenue possible to try and trade up. But to me, if you do look at his team, it's going to be a serious rebuild. You've got Mac Jones and Jimmy G, and then even your running backs, you've got nothing there. You've got Devin Achane. And I think quite a lot of people have documented this, just sort of following the threads and sort of talking about Derek's team. But you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You got 10 safeties in this side, and then only 4 linebackers. It's look, I don't want to sort of talk out of merit here, but it is obviously just a bit of a messy situation there for Derek. And I think, look, he had so much draft cap there, and I think he's done the best he could with the picks he had, in the sense that your 107 to 110, I think going Johnson, Addison, Kincaid, Flowers ticks a lot of boxes there. But he hasn't really addressed running back or quarterback, which again, maybe that's next year's problem to sort of deal with. But I think the Silver Ballers it's definitely going to be a slightly longer rebuild for Derek.
Yeah, I think when you're rebuilding, you just want talented players. So that talented players that can obviously contribute to your team, but then talented players that you can have value and then you can flip. So if you're struggling at running back, and next year, then you could flip one of these wide receivers and get a running back. But I think he was in, like you said, it was the end of a tier for me. So the top 9, I would say 10 if you include Dalton Kincaid, who I'm just not going to pick because he's a tight end. So top 10, that was a drop off of the maybe second tier of guys. So I think he picked up a lot of talent, and then after that, the 111 is where you start getting questionable picks, and then I think that was the biggest reach for me was Marvin Mims at 111. Dan's quite a big reach, I think. Like, he's a talented player, but you look at the situation in Denver, and he's got a lot of guys blocking him, and obviously there's talking those guys getting traded, but I liked after the draft, I like listening to the press conferences of all the GMs and the coaches. And when he talked about Mims, they said he's a great player, but they talked about special teams like so often that it just makes me think that he's just going to be a return guy like for his whole career. That put me off a wee bit, but yeah, a bit of a reach at the first round. What do you guys think? Do you think about Mims?
His landing spot in Denver? The wide receiving core. Okay, it wasn't great last year. A lot of that's to do with the quarterback play as well last year. So they've got some good talent already there. So whether he can break it, obviously Hamler spends most of his time in the injury room. So maybe he's the guy that sort of steps in to take up on that side once he's more bedded in. Yeah, I mean possibly. I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm trying to look at the Muskies.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at the Muskies squad now. He's now got 14 wide receivers on his roster, of which obviously 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are rookies. He took obviously A.T. Perry, the Saints wide receiver, in the 5th round. He took Mingo at the 212. You obviously got Xavier Hutchinson in the 7th. And if you look at his wide receiver group, you've got Ayuk, who's going to be relevant. You've got Rashad Bateman coming off an injury. Hopefully, Doob sort of breaks out again and doesn't become sort of into a bit of a timeshare in targets. I'm not too optimistic about Josh Palmer. I think Josh Palmer is going to lose quite a few targets to Quentin Johnson now. But then again, it depends on the health of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Juju Smith-Schuster. I see why the Muskies have dart thrown at wide receiver, but at the same time, I don't know, the 111. They've also got a lot of running backs, and it's a big squad. What they've got 60 players, 60 players rostered. It's tough to see what Dan is actually sort of looking at, how he's looking at building here through his draft. And if you just sort of look at his comment, obviously he's talking about Sean Payton, obviously putting his stamp on the offense. But yeah, I think that is a little bit of a reach for Marvin Mims, but at the same time, if that's your guy, that's your guy. And what other picks did the Muskies have? Their next pick was 212. They went Mingo. Then 312. They took a tight end. It's difficult to really think where else they would have gone, but yeah, I think 111 is a little bit high for Marvin Mims personally as well.
Yeah, the other sort of one that's standing out to me in this little bit is the Jack Campbell pick. But looking across, obviously similar in the TT with Eric taking him as well. So that's quite a strong statement from teams to take a linebacker in this class at the 112. So just looking at obviously it's a pretty solid roster. It was competing last year, so I guess it's adding talent to what you've already got and stocking up on the players you need. I thought that's kind of a strong statement from both those sort of teams who competed last year to bring in linebackers so early.
One of my favorite drafts though in the DD was Rob and the Las Vegas Degenerates. I think if you sort of look at his draft here, he obviously had 2 elite picks. He had the 102 and 103, and with Bijan going 101. You could almost excuse someone for each. I wouldn't say reaching, but you could excuse someone going Jamal Gibbs or Jason at the 103 there. But I think Rob did very well there to sort of stick to his guns and go Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young. He's obviously got Gino and he's got Kirk Cousins, so he's in a situation where he's going to have 4. You'd like to hope 4 starting quarterbacks in the NFL by the end of the season. And that could really sort of cash in value. Then on the running back side, he picked on Roschon Johnson, although some people might say a bit high at the 210. Like Ross said earlier, I like him as well. I was fortunate enough to get him at the 301. But then Jalen Carter, Taji Spears, Jalen Hyatt. I like these picks that Rob has there, and even Juice Vaughn at the 602, and then why not a luxury pick at the 607 with Jake Moody. But I don't know what Ross. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? On Rob's draft?
Well, the Jake Moody pick just completely ruins it for me. Like, you should not be drafting kickers. It's unforgivable. Like, you don't get the luxury of having a taxi squad guy because no one's going to claim him off the taxi squad, so you're not going to get an extra pick. And what's the point in having a kicker in your taxi squad? Just wait until pick someone off waivers. Like, it's just wait. I'm sorry, I'm not having any kicker getting drafted, and he was drafted in every single draft, like every single conference, which is absolutely crazy. But
the Shanahan effect.
He's a kicker club. I think it's easy to look at guys who have like a lot of picks and say that they've done really well because look at all these players that they got. But I think Rob did do well to get some impactful players, and he definitely needs the impactful players. I think we've talked about Roschon Johnson, Tyjae Spears already, about guys who we like. So yeah, he's done a decent job, and he maybe needs to string together a couple more of these drafts or RFAs to add talent. But he's done well. But for me, like another one that I liked, obviously maybe not got the elite level picks, was Bob and the Slashers. He didn't have a pick until 202. He took Will Levis, but then at 209 he took Zach Charbonnet, which is like a full round discount compared to every other conference. And as much as I didn't like the spot that he landed in, like he was drafted highly, and he's got some talent, and he will get some touches in Seahawks. So what did you guys think? Do you think that was of Bob's draft in general as well as just Zach Charbonnet?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a player that's going to be like a bit like the Jaguars, right? He will start seeing more touches. They'll start using more a committee approach. I think more and more teams are realizing it's not just having one lead back anymore. Unless the guy's absolutely exceptional, you need to spread longevity of the players. I mean, it's next game of season. All these things are sort of obviously seen last year. The wear and tear on these guys. I think it is a clever pick. Also, like obviously took your guy, the Jets running back, who's going to cement his starting place above everybody else at the Jets running back room, which is obviously getting quite busy now, isn't it? There's quite a few good running backs.
I really want to hear Ross's opinion of Israel Abanikanda, because I also, the fantasy football addict that I am, I got into sort of campus to canton leagues that Shaq talks about, and I joined 1 or 2 last season, and I was quite lucky to have Israel Abanikanda out of Pitt, and he was an absolute monster in college football, and so he was someone that I was just looking at sort of maybe a late sort of dart throw possibly. And then when I saw his landing spot in the Jets, I was like, you've absolutely killed him. But I don't know, Ross, as the Jets fan, what was your thoughts on the pick, and do you think he has any chance of being productive there?
Yeah, I really like that from a Jets perspective, from a fandom perspective. He's big and he's fast, and he can rip off the big, massive runs and just like make a difference. And that's what we really needed. That's quite similar to what Breece Hall was doing early last year, just ripping off 60-yard runs out of nowhere. I'm not saying he's as good as Breece Hall. I'm just saying in terms of some of the things that he can do. But I think his path to fantasy production is going to be injuries, and it's going to be an injury to Breece Hall. Although Breece isn't going to get 100% of the snaps, and it's going to be a split backfield, I don't think there's going to be a second Jets running back that is productive after Breece. Michael Carter's like done. He's just a locker room leader right now. He's not going to contribute much, and the other guys I don't see have much impact. So the RB2 job is there for Abanikanda if he wants it. And the other thing, he's quite young as well. He's really young, so he's got a lot of time and space to develop. So from a Jet standpoint, love it. From a fantasy angle, I think he needs something to happen for him to have value. But look where he's getting picked. He's getting picked in the 4th round, late 4th round. So I've no qualms taking him there. And I think he was sort of at the top of that next tier of guys who are like backup running backs.
And where does that leave Michael Carter? Do you think Michael Carter's finished in New York, or?
Well, he's not finished. He'll be kicking it around. But in terms of fantasy production, I think he's finished. I think he's just not been as productive as he was in his first year. And it might be because he's getting too many touches last year after Breece Hall went down. But so we might see a bit of a resurgence when he's maybe a bit more healthy and getting less touches. He'll be more efficient. But I just think he's not got the same juice as he did in his rookie year. And you'll see Breece obviously is taking over the backfield. And then guys like Abanikanda will come in. And obviously Zonovan Knight did really well when he came in. So I think there's a bit too many mouths to feed for him fantasy-wise. But he is on the block in RR if anyone wants to give me a 2nd round pick for him.
So I just like to point, I'm looking at Bob's roster. He has pretty much got the entire Jets back room. He's got Abanikanda, Carter, Breece Hall, Zonovan. So he's covering all his bases. Obviously, he's
get one good running back out of that. You get one good running back out of that, surely.
Like, I guess the hard bit, I mean, which one do you start? But then he has got Tony Pollard, he has got James Conner, and he's got Charbonnet. So he's got and Chuba Hubbard. So he's got quite a depth in there as well. So I guess stocking up the room, just work out who does finish. Who is RB2 or RB1 at the Jets will be probably quite handy towards the end. Trying to see whoever else on this. Tyler Scott as well going in the 7th round, 705 to the Dragons. I've got to say, looking at Bob's conference, when he was offered to swap with Stye, did he realise who he's up against week in, week out on this? The Eternals, the Tyrants, and the Dragons.
Yeah,
brave man.
I think he was looking at his roster. I think he was looking at the roster and thinking, I like this roster a little bit better.
They must look slightly white. As he's a brave man taking on those three in his chapter.
I think that's the thing, though. Why not? Like, I think, as Ross just pointed out, I think it's all what you're working with, not who you're working against. I think if you start focusing on your opposition in fantasy leagues, that's when you do, I think, tend to drop the ball, and that's when you do tend to chase things that you shouldn't be chasing. I think the team that Bob would have inherited, you could argue, was probably in a worse situation. But I think obviously Stye was sort of fed up playing bridesmaid in that chapter that he was ready for sort of a fresh new look in the TT. So yeah, look, I think it's fallen into Bob's lap, and I think it'll be nice to see Bob ruffle a few feathers there in chapter 1.
Well, there's two serial winners in there, and the tyrants. So it's quite a tough. I guess you can get yourself to third, right? Start off with and get past it.
You say serial winners. Andy's only ever won 1 title here. We need to slow down.
Yeah, I think you'll find
that's a distant memory now.
There's quite a few titles held in England from memory, isn't there? I think John's won a couple. Right?
I think John's also only won 1. I think it's Ian that's only won multiple. But I stand to be corrected. This is my knowledge of the main league. I probably need to scrub up on it a bit.
Right. Now, moving on to the greatest, the quickest, the most influential of all the leagues, the RR. Best till last. As I said, I didn't have any picks, so I sort of just watched on and envy what to do. So, but again, looking at, obviously, Bijan, obviously, apart from the TT, who had the first 2 picks anyway, he took Bijan as number 2 instead of number 1. He's the consensus up, ADP 1 on there. Obviously, then Tyler took CJ Stroud at number 2 over Richardson, over Bryce Young. There's a few, obviously, I guess it was quite a tough choice when you were at 102. Is that something you didn't think you'd have done, Nate? Or
it's difficult because I think Matty Warbucks will be over the moon to see Anthony Richardson there 103. But at the same time, I think Tyler's actually made the smart move here because I do think CJ Stroud is actually the safest of those 3 quarterbacks. And I just think, although he obviously struggled in one of those sort of tests, the mental test or whatever that he retook, and he was fine in the end or whatever, I think there are genuine concerns on the size of Bryce Young. And look, we can all say generational talent and the other small quarterbacks. Look at your Drew Breeses, look at your Kyler Murray's, whatever. But they're very different to Bryce Young. Maybe Bryce Young's obviously a bit more similar to someone like a Drew Brees if that's the career he goes. But Drew Brees was still 6 foot. Like, we're talking about Bryce Young, and I know this has been the narrative the whole of the offseason, but there is something that worries me about Bryce Young, whereas CJ Stroud feels a lot more the part. And I just think in Houston with D'Amico Ryan, I just think that he will be given a lot more time there to sort of achieve a franchise rebuild. And I also think sneakily, I think being in that AFC South is actually probably a little bit. Look, one's in the AFC South, one's in the NFC South. They're both 2 terrible divisions at the moment. But I just think that I don't know. I went in thinking that I think CJ Stroud is the safest quarterback of those elite 3, but I do think that Anthony Richardson has the highest ceiling. So I don't know. I think Tyler's played it safe, but I think Tyler will have a serviceable quarterback for years to come.
To play alongside Goff, who he's got for the next 10 years or something, I think, contract-wise in our league. The top 6, obviously, as we said, top 7 are sort of fairly standard, just different people taking different ones on there. The one we discussed him earlier, Rishi Rice, I thought maybe he at the 112. I guess, again, the Blitz seem to pick the winners most of the time, so maybe he knows something that I don't know, or we don't know. Maybe he thinks he'll fit straight into that system in Kansas. The guy I've really come out liking from the whole draft, Sam Laporta. I think everything I've been reading or hearing since he's gone to the Lions has been very positive, and he could be one of these rare sort of tight ends having a good first season. I know Ross is not a tight end fan, and I can see him shaking his hand already. Well, yeah. I mean, and obviously, as we compete in another league, I've just taken him, and I was very happy to take him, and I'm a big fan of him now, so that's fine.
Look, I think realistically we need to look at it because half the flipping offense is going to be suspended for betting. So there will be targets here for Laporta at early season, and I think if he makes plays and if he stands out, then why not? Goff was quite good. Was it with Higbee before Stafford was in town. I think Goff always had a bit of a weird tight end fetish, not the biggest ones, but he found tight ends. And I think, I don't know, look, they lost Hawkinson last season. He obviously moved across, which was a great move for him personally. You had Amon-Ra St. Brown had an awesome season. Obviously, Jameson Williams was just coming good before he went and bet on something. I think they're going to be targets there. You've lost DeAndre Swift now. You've got Jamar Gibbs, right? So you've got obviously David Montgomery as well. It's going to be an explosive offense, and I think Laporta is going to be productive. Whether that's a tight end one, who knows? Tight ends are such a tough landscape to predict that it's not difficult to break into a tight end one position if you see the volume, and it's all about volume. And that offense is going to be playing catch up. That defense is getting a little bit better, but it's still going to concede 30 points a game probably. So I don't know. I think Laporta is going to be relevant. It's just, yeah, can he do it all on his own, or will it be Amon-Ra St. Brown who's going to be a proper wide receiver one? I don't know yet, but I like Laporta.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Motor City Crunch draft. He's come away very strong from this. I guess obviously having enough sort of early picks gives you some good talent on there. So he sort of picked up running backs, wide receivers. Obviously, he's taken a bit of a chance on Hendon Hooker in the end of the second, but he's starting behind Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love on his roster. Obviously, Baker Mayfield's there as well, which he'll get a few games out of him, I guess, before they realise that he's not as good as everyone sort of thinks he is. I think the Puffins did some nice moves as well. I think they've brought in some nice longer term talent. Also, we discussed Ross. I think obviously you've made your picks on it, and do you want to comment on your own picks or?
Yeah, well, we've not really talked about Zay Flowers, but I got him at 109, and I didn't really make any trades this draft. I didn't have much capital, to be honest. I don't have a future. I don't have a 2024 first, and I didn't have many picks this year to package up. So I thought I'd just maybe stay and pick who was left of that tier. Because, like I said, I had my top 9 guys, and Zay Flowers was the one who dropped. And I think I'm being talked around to it. I don't know if it's just a confirmation bias now that he's on the unicorns. That I'm like, oh, actually, he's probably one of the better of the top wide receivers. But yeah, so I didn't mind the Zay Flowers pick, and then I got Bigsby, who's one of my favourite guys here. The end of the second, I think it's one of the highest he was picked in across the conferences. But I was happy with getting my guy. It was either between him or Tyjae Spears. But I went with Bigsby because I thought he'd get on the field earlier, and I've already got Derrick Henry. So having the Spears as a handcuff is actually counterproductive for me because I need more guys who have the ability to be a running back one. And then a couple of late picks. I got DeMarvion Overshown, who I think's got a good path to opportunity. We'll see if that comes up, because I always pick third round linebackers. They never seem to come to fruition. And then BJ Ojulari, again, taxi squad guy in the 7th round, who I just like the talent, so I'm betting on talent there. But not many picks, but I'm happy with what I came away with. Maybe get some impact in years 1 and 2, hopefully.
Yeah, look, I like what you've done. As you said, there's not much capital there, but I agree. Zay Flowers sort of as your play there at the 109. The only other pick that some people have been going that earlier, someone like Dalton Kincaid. I don't know what tight ends you have, but again, it's a high value. It's a lot of draft capital to invest in a rookie tight end. It doesn't matter how good the bloke is. Like, look at someone like Kyle Pitts, and Kyle Pitts was only unfortunate due to an injury, but Kyle Pitts was a consensus sort of top 4, top 5 pick in a lot of drafts 2 years ago. So I think it's a high risk spending that much value. But yeah, I think Zay Flowers at the 109 is the best option there, unless you thought Zach Charbonnet was the guy to take away the job from Kenneth Walker. And based on landing spot, I just don't think that's the right play there. So Unless, I don't know if you're in a situation where you could have traded back from the 109, but it sounds like you are a Zay Flowers guy. So to me, if you're a Zay Flowers guy, that's the pick to make.
Yeah, I thought there was
Especially
maybe
with
too
Zay-
big a
so-
drop off to trade back, and he was at the end of my tier, so I thought like that it was like a fall off a cliff after that. So yeah, I thought I'd stick and take the first round wide receiver rather than like a second round running back
Yeah.
or even worse. And
Also, all the chat coming out of the Ravens at the moment is more passing game. So perhaps there's more targets. I mean, obviously, OBJ's there, whether or not he's fit or not. I guess there's a few other, like you said, Bateman coming back and a few others. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how he does fit into that system. It's not really a set tier in that wide receiver room the last 2 seasons. So
yeah, the talent will come to the top.
Yeah. Talking about sort of Dalton Kincaid, what's everyone's sort of thoughts on Mike and the Gators rebuild attempt? He had plenty of draft cap, although only 1 first round and then sort of 2/3, 2/4, 1/5, 3/6. What Mike? What were your thoughts in your fellow chapter 12 rival?
Well, Mike seems to have a good eye for tight ends. Every time I sort of look at his roster over the last 2 years, he's had some very, very good tight ends on there. Kittle, obviously still there. Kelsey he had. He picked up Luke Musgrave as well in the 4th. So he obviously has got a keen eye for sort of tight ends. I think Mike will say obviously he sold a lot of players off last year, and it is a slow sort of process. He has added some very good talented players on there. Which I think last year he knew he was dropping down and wanted to rebuild it. So I guess if I was Mike running the Gators, maybe having Darnold and Stafford as my only 2 sort of quarterbacks, maybe a little bit worrying. Maybe I might have gone for Levis as he was still there at that point. But I guess Mike's got faith in playing Stafford, and hopefully maybe Darnold does get the start in San Francisco. Everyone's talking Purdy versus Lance. Maybe Darnold comes off the rails and wins that job. He's still got a lot of talent on his roster as well. Some young players: Sky Moore, Chris Olave, Pittman. I think he's trying to bulk up the offense and maybe pick up a few sort of gems on the defensive side. He's Tyree Wilson, Byron Young. Trying to think a few other players he's picked up as well. Jordan Battle, Brian Branch as well. Good safety, I think. So it was a 4th rounder. So he's obviously it's not an overnight thing, right? He's not rebuild in one draft. I think him and Sean and the Puffins have definitely pushed their teams up from where they were sort of pre-draft with RFA as well. So I think probably quite a competitive chapter 12. And obviously Corbin's taken Corbin took Bryce Young, so he's got another good sort of QB coming through. It is for the guy having no draft picks, watching everyone else add his young talent. If these guys come out and perform year 1, my pushing all my draft picks into the hat early may backfire massively. But I guess we'll sort of see more on that. But look, obviously, Corbin's got a fairly strong QB room, running back room. He's got some good wide receivers. Mark Andrews at tight end. He's building quite nicely. Obviously, Daniel Bellinger of the Giants, who had quite a good start to last season before he got injured. There's some, I think Chapter 12, quite tight this year. I think anyone's there really to win it. I think, as Ross said, it's production, not just the names. It's these guys actually putting production out. So as much as these rookies are coming through, maybe it's we'll have to sort of look into it a bit more from my side and maybe review how I do things in the future. But the 2025 first and second may be up for grabs in the near future.
Yeah, get out.
Yeah, I don't like draft picks. I think this year, we're in 6 leagues. I've only drafted in 2. Everything's been sold off very early.
Yeah, look, I think it's some people like the sort of the excitement around a draft and the prospects and doing the homework and sort of seeing what's coming. But as you say, some people prefer the tangible, Mike, and I think you've put together quite a strong team there in the RR, and you've obviously you've done pretty well to make it that competitive. I think the first year you narrowly missed out on the top playoffs, but then you won, I think, the best of the rest. And then last year you made the playoffs for the first time. So I don't know, your team's looking strong, but that chapter 12, I would say you're relatively lucky, and you've got 2 rebuild sides, but you and Corbin are going to be sort of at loggerheads for that chapter 12 title. And I think that's going to be an exciting sort of battle to watch. How do you feel about chapter 10, Ross, after the draft? Do you think, because the chapter 10 was one of, if not one of the more competitive leagues, or one of the more competitive chapters in roster wars, do you think your draft has left you in a better position relative to everyone else?
Yeah, combine that with the RFA. I think I did a good job. I sort of executed my game plan. I got a lot more talented on defense in RFA. I feel really good about that side of the ball. And then on offense, I think I need a bit more depth, but we'll see if any of these draft picks make an impact in year one. But I think I could definitely compete, but I say that every year, and every year it's even more depressing. But yeah, it's a difficult division. I think maybe RFA wasn't as kind to the Pigskins because he had quite a lot of guys to protect. And yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Hadji's draft. But again, that's just when I'm saying I'm not a big fan, it's just because he didn't pick players I like. Doesn't mean that they're not going to be good. It's just players that I didn't really like that much. So yeah, but we'll see. But I fancy my chances. We'll just see if we can sustain and survive any injuries on the offensive side of the ball.
I'm just looking through Hadji's picks now. He had 2 tight ends, running back. Yeah, he's adding talent to what was there. But as you said, if these guys are not in your top 15, top 20 or whatever, I guess people view it in different ways. But obviously, Charbonnet I think would be a good pick. Tight ends. See, Michael Mayer could be the interesting one, right? And obviously, then you got Luke Schoonemaker in Dallas. I mean, if Dallas start going back to what they used to do with, Shoemaker's obviously compared to.
Yeah, the old Jason Witten. He's a replacement.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, so he's being labelled as the next Jason Witten. So could be some interesting there. You also got Dawson Knox as well. So I think your chapter is very competitive. I mean, there's one point last year. If you looked at some of the sort of tables, you all 4 of you could have got into the playoffs quite easily at some point. So it is a difficult one to get out of. A bit like sort of chapter 1, I guess. So if someone comes knocking, Ross, are you going to transfer across to the PP?
Absolutely not. No, it's the worst conference in roster wars.
No.
I'd rather stick in chapter 10.
Let's slow down on the hate mail.
Yeah, I'm looking at Aaron's roster's not bad. It's a very competitive division. Yeah. So I mean, you can't. Like you say, it'll come down to some pretty rough moves here and there. Who's going to be lucky one week and get a stomping game for one of the running backs or wide receivers. So I don't envy you in there. Obviously, as I think the whole of the RR is very competitive. Chapter 11's the same. I mean, obviously the Blitz have been very dominant over years, but the Rottweilers and the Crunch Boys with their draft this year. Tyler's obviously a bit of a rebuild. He picked up some good players in RFA. As well as the draft. So yeah, I think the whole of the RR is going to be fun to watch this year. And obviously we got the thing of looking at some of these teams, and obviously I think D Hop is on Hadji's team, I believe.
Yeah,
where his lands might be, that could be quite interesting as well. For not just for Hadji but other teams. If he joins the Ravens or the Chiefs or something, obviously the knock-on effects on some of the other players that have been drafted this year to be quite interesting. So I guess we'll see. Anything else, guys? Or should we get this wrapped up? So let people get back to back to work or driving to work or wherever they're listening or watching this.
Yeah, I think that was good. I think it was good to just jump around the league in general and just go through the draft and what's been happening and who's been picking and who's been thinking and strategizing. But yeah, it's a bit of a lull now. It's a bit of a slow period now. Everyone's just eagerly watching the OTAs and seeing what happens and before you realize it's going to be contract allocations and more panic.
Actually, that's not far off now. Start looking at the old spreadsheets again, working out how many years they've left and whatever else. So, yes, the only plus of having no rookie picks, I don't have to work about how many years contract I got to put in for him.
Yeah, just your RFA players.
Yeah, definitely. Right, guys. So thank you all for joining us. We'll hope to reconvene soon, and take care.
Cheers. Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Thanks, Roscoe.